On today's video, close to 300,000 U.S. citizens are going to be forced to flee the state of Florida. And that is just the minors. That doesn't include adults. Here are YouTube's policies on hate speech. It includes immigration status and nationality. So if anybody violates those laws, do not reply to their comments. Just go ahead and report them. We don't want people here on our YouTube channel who can't follow the rules. The source of our information is Unidos US, no association disclaimer. I have no ties to this organization. They're the only ones who actually had the information that I needed to create today's video. The reason these U.S. citizens are going to have to flee the state of Florida is because of State Bill 1718, which took effect in the state of Florida on July 1st, 2023. The state of Florida has 963,000 Hispanic students enrolled, and that was in the year 1919 to 2020. 290,000 of which are in English learning programs. 1/3 of Florida's minor population has a foreign-born parent. 95% of Florida's minors are U.S.-born citizens. Third grade level math will tell you that 320,000 U.S.-born citizens in the state of Florida have parents who are foreign-born. 7.1% of Florida's students have parents that are unauthorized aliens. Assuming there's 3 million students in Florida, that means that at least 213,000 children in Florida are going to watch their parents have to leave the state of Florida, and they're going to have to go along with them. And that is only students. So we can assume just by a quick glance at these numbers that roughly, just talking minors and students, between 213,000 to 300,000 people who are U.S. citizens are going to have to flee the state of Florida, mostly minors, because of the new State Bill 1718. So while nearly 1 million Hispanic students are enrolled in Florida schools, we can assume that less than 1/3 of them, or even 1/5 of them, bare minimum, are going to have to leave the state of Florida. This is called internal displacement, when somebody is a citizen of a country, but they have to flee their home, but they remain within the borders of their country of birth. In most countries, this happens due to natural disasters. In the case of the United States and a few other countries, it is due to war and conflicts. These students that are having to leave the state of Florida are leaving the state of Florida because of a conflict between Republicans and Democrats. And they are now internally displaced refugees within their own country. Most countries refer to this type of behavior as a genocide. However, in the United States, it's called a state bill. The reason it is considered that is because you're forcing the parents to decide whether they leave the children of somebody else in the state of Florida, and that, under the definition of the United Nations, part of the bill also prevents Hispanics from going to hospitals. That's also Part D. Those who are not U.S. citizens, of course. There's many aspects of this law that we don't have time to elaborate on today's video would make this bill fall under the category of a GENA. The provisions of this bill do literally falls under the category of a gen and is causing internally displaced refugees within the United States. To remove hundreds of thousands of Hispanic students that were on the way to be police officers, teachers, and firefighters literally constitutes the definition of a gen. In the last 5 years, the analytics for graduation for Hispanic migrant students has increased dramatically, which means that the future of Florida doctors, police officers was mostly in the hands of migrant students. This bill genuinely ensures that the future of Florida's labor force will be absent of hundreds of thousands of Hispanic students. We took a poll on our channel of what you guys thought the estimates would be. Most of us agreed that it would be over 50,000. When I started to do the analytics on this topic and I saw the real numbers, I literally cried. In August, when students in Florida go back to school, hundreds of thousands of seats will be empty. This bill has been so upsetting to the Hispanic community of Florida that this year in the state of Florida, many Hispanics refused to celebrate July 4th celebrations and even left businesses open as a sign of how unpleased they are with the fact that even though they are U.S. citizens, a lot of them are being treated as if they were not. Many Hispanics went on social media expressing that this year they will not be celebrating July 4th anymore. They don't feel the need to feel patriotic when their children who are U.S. born citizens are now being forced to be displaced internally. Those are the real numbers. That is how many U.S. citizens are going to have to leave the state of Florida. That doesn't include married couples who have different immigration status. Many people who are U.S. citizens are going to find themselves moving to other states so they can stick to their family, which means that realistically these numbers could be much higher. This is a topic that nobody in the United States wants to touch because both political parties are guilty for letting this happen or for participating in the situation. The hypocrisy of the United States getting involved in other countries' gen. Now, when we have it happening here in the United States, none of the media coverages even want to touch this topic. Most of those people went to journalism schools and they know exactly the definition of a gen because they studied in schools and colleges before they became journalists to understand what's happening in the United States. But despite the fact they know this is happening, this is a topic that nobody benefits from talking about. Everybody's going to look the other way and pretend that this isn't happening in the United States. I really don't want to be covering this topic on my personal time. I try to go to the beach 3-4 times a week. Just like I didn't want to have to cover COVID and I had to. And I didn't want to have to cover the riots when those were going on and I covered that. I don't have any political affiliation. When we cover the riots in Tampa, I clearly expose how people destroyed their own communities to their own detriment. We explore everything from inner city crime all the way to rural places that are poor. On our channel, we don't discriminate or take sides with political parties. I'm giving you this information as is raw with as little personal input as possible. It also is noteworthy that many of the provisions of this law also drastically reduce what's known as the Freedom Index. This state bill also goes against many of the Human Freedom Index principles. And again, there's not enough time on this video to elaborate on that. But there's a huge level of hypocrisy in the amount of involvement the United States, United Nations, and other organizations have in other countries when these things happen there. But when these things happen here in the United States, it's just another bill that passes. The homicide rate in the United States is already, with its largest cities, among the worst in the entire world, on par with Mexico and Brazil. And now basic human right violations on par with what happens in Asia and Africa are taking place here in the United States. But nobody wants to measure the United States with the same bar that they measure other countries. But regardless, these are the facts, not the opinions of the atrocity taking place in the state of Florida. And while most news outlets out there just aren't going to care to give you these types of details about this situation, on our channel, we care about people, whether they're U.S. citizens or not. In this case, the victims are U.S. citizens and minors at that. The vast majority of us have morals and concepts that let us know that these are the most vulnerable people in our society who we need to protect. However, when they become internal refugees in their own country, nobody seems to even blink and care about it. Living in fear in your own country is a concept that people in Mexico, Russia, and Iraq are familiar with. These are countries with internally displaced people. Now the United States joins the ranks of places where even people who are given rights as being U.S. citizens have to flee for their life, for their freedom, or risk being persecuted by the state or government. Fear of persecution in the United States, on par with what people in Iraq, Mexico, and even Russia are living in, is the same type of sentiment that these people are feeling right now as they're having to leave the state where they were born in. Oh guys, I'm not a lawmaker. I'm just a journalist. I don't make these rules. I don't enforce them. All I do is give you the information, and we, as subscribers here on YouTube, know that we have to follow YouTube's regulations. And if I find somebody that's making comments that violate YouTube's rules, I'm gonna have to block you. And besides, even if YouTube doesn't automatically filter out your comment, I'm tired of seeing the hate that's prevalent in this country work its way into my YouTube channel. If you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say nothing at all. But if you do say it, just know I'm not gonna give you a chance to express your hate. I'm just gonna block you. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, because we're almost to 100,000 subscribers. And remember, if you're a realtor or a business owner in the state of Florida, make sure you first follow federal guidelines before you follow state guidelines, because the federal government isn't going to be handing out passes if you decide to discriminate somebody based on your state laws. That's what a lot of large corporations are telling their employees in the state of Florida. However, we know from states like Alabama that when state law and state rights enter the realm, the federal government usually doesn't do anything about it. If you have any questions or concerns, this is just my personal opinion. I strongly recommend that you find a lawyer and have them explain the law to you. I think a lot of people, Hispanics in particular, and other migrants are having a difficult time to accept the truth about the situation, because in their minds, they want to believe that the United States wouldn't commit human rights violations. But in reality, a lot of people are starting to wake up to the reality that the United States and the illusion of freedoms that you have here and civil rights and all that isn't really a factual thing. It's more of a thing that in theory is supposed to exist, but in practice we're seeing that the United States is no different than the other countries in the world who have their conflicts and their atrocities as well. And well, my job isn't to become part of the mess. My job is just to bring you guys the information. I hope you guys have a beautiful day. I love these things, man. I have like a whole collection of kids' toys. Yeah. Kids' cars.
You need help?
Yeah. Hot Wheels. Let's see if we can find it. It's somewhere in there. Which jewelry you find's fake? No, that's it, my man. Thanks for the help.